Welcome to our second video in 3.2, where we are going to discuss how to find intercepts, points off our graph, domains, range, all kinds of stuff that we've been doing with equation functions, if you will, and now we're going to work with just graphs. All right, so looking at our graph here, this graph represents f of x. You can see this little notation next to the graph. They want you to find f of 0, f of 3, f of negative 2. So these numbers are in the x position, so they represent the x coordinate. You are finding the y coordinate. So f of 0 will go to 0 on the x-axis, go up, hit the point, 0, 4. Return the y coordinate 4 for an answer. F of 3, set it equal to y, we'll go to x equals 3. Go down to our graph, that's at 3, negative 3. Return negative 3 for an answer. F of negative 2, set that equal to y, go to negative 2. Oh, we're right there with my point, negative 2, 0. Return the 0 for your answer. To find the domain of f of x, we're going to think of our vertical line test. Make a vertical line at the far left of the graph. We're starting at negative 6. Notice it's a closed point. So I'm physically touching it, so it's equal. If there was an arrow there, we're going off to infinity, both in a negative x direction and a positive y direction. Now, in my math lab, I've noticed that when their graphs hit the border of the grids, if there's no closed dot, this is the author's version of that it goes on forever. I don't know why they didn't take the time to put an arrow there. On my tests, I will always put an arrow or a closed or open dot. You will know what that is doing. Then we're going to take this vertical line and we're going to slide it to the right, and notice that it's constantly hitting the graph everywhere we go. So it ends at a positive 6, so that's my domain. In interval notation, the domain is bracket, negative 6 comma 6 bracket, because we can physically touch those x values. Or you can write it as a compound inequality. Negative 6 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 6. Finding the range, now we're going to look for the y coordinate. So instead of a vertical line at the far left, I'm going to go a horizontal line at the bottom of the graph. And again, I'm just going to quickly get rid of my line. Notice that there's no closed dots. There doesn't have to be dots. These lines are filled with dots. So therefore, my first y coordinate I touch at is at negative 4. And as I move my graph upward, I'm touching in 4 spots, then eventually 2, and then finally at the very top of that peak there, I'm at y equals 4. So my range, capital R, is bracket negative 4 comma 4 bracket for interval notation or compound inequality, negative 4 less than or equal to y less than or equal to 4. Again, my math lab likes interval notation. I will accept either one on the test. List all the intercepts. This means where your graph crosses your x-axis or your horizontal axis, sometimes known as horizontal intercepts, and your y-intercept, which is your vertical y-axis or a vertical intercept. So find all the places. I like to find all the x-intercepts first. There's negative 6, 0. Note that intercepts are points and should be written as ordered pair points. We have another one at negative 2, 0, 2, 0, and 6, 0. Those are all my x-intercepts or horizontal intercepts. Now, real quick note, the publisher is lazy and cheap. Don't be surprised if you see a text box and it says x equals, then they just want the x coordinates, negative 6 comma negative 2 comma 2 comma 6. All right. I've always complained to the author that you have to list these as points. And what's funny, I think this is more publisher than author because the author defined this as a point. The problem here is that the publisher does not want to pay the computer programmers to write the code to check for a left parentheses, the x-coordinate value, a comma, the y-coordinate value, and a right parentheses. They want to get away with just checking the x value, 1 instead of 4 things. So on the test, remember, it's always points. Your y-intercept, that's at 0, 4. Notice that your x-intercepts will have y-coordinates of zeros. Your y-intercept has an x-coordinate of 0. Okay, 5 and 6 are very similar in the way we're going to solve these, but the answers are different. Number 5 says, how many times does the line y equal -2 intersect the graph? So I'm going to go to -2, draw in a horizontal line. How many times does it intersect? Well, there's 1 intersection, there's 2, there's 3, and there's, come back here, 4. 4 intersections. They didn't ask for the points. They're not asking for the x's. They just want to know how many intersections there are. Now, when we get to number 6, for what values of x does f of x equals -3? Remember, f of x is the y, so y equals -3. So at -3, we'll draw a horizontal line. And now we're going to find the actual x-coordinates of these intersection points. So here I'm at -5, -3, but they only want the x value. Here's -3, -3, just the -3 of the x. Here we want +3 for x and a +5 for x. There's my x values. Now this is what you might see in my math lab if they were asking for the x-intercepts. And these types of questions is what I was complaining about, that there's no difference in their appearance, but yet they're representing 2 different concepts. And if memory serves me right, I'm thinking you're starting to see points here instead of just the values. Number 7, for what values of x is f of x or y greater than 0? So we want the part of the graph that's going to be above the x-axis. This is where my positive y's are. I don't want anything on the x-axis. That means it'd have to be equal to 0. There's no equal to line. And I don't want any negative y's. So I want all the x's between -2 and 2. So that's my compound inequality. Notice no equal to lines. -2 is less than x is less than 2. Or in interval notation, -2, 2, but with parentheses. Wait a minute. This is where you have to be focused. Notice this interval notation looks the same as if it was a point. So you have to understand what it is you are asking or reading. Okay? All right, consider the function g of x equals x plus 1 over x plus 2. We're going to find the domain, and we're going to do this all algebraically, and then we're going to bring the calculator into play. So find the domain. It's a fraction. We talked about this earlier. Find the domain restriction for your implied domain. Set the denominator not equal to 0. Solve it for x. X can't be equal to -2. 2 is the point 1, 1/2 on the graph of G. So what we would do here is you take the 1 and you substitute it into both x's in the fraction. Add the tops and the bottoms together to get 2/3. Well, that's your y-coordinate. Well, the point says it was at 1, 1/2, not 2/3. So no, this point is not on the graph. The y-coordinates would have to match with the y value that you created when you substituted in. If x equals 2, what is g of x? Same thing we did with number 2. Put the 2 in for both x's. 2 plus 1 is 3. 2 plus 2 is 4. That's my y-coordinate. So what is the point on the graph? 2, 3/4. Number 4, now notice it says if g of x is equal to 2. That doesn't mean the 2 is the x. All right? We got to find the x. That means the 2 is the y. So now we let the fraction x plus 1 over x plus 2 be equal to 2. And we have to solve that. Well, you can't solve for x when it's in the denominator of a fraction. So since I'm dividing by the binomial x plus 2, I need to do its inverse. I need to multiply by the binomial x plus 2 to both sides. That will cancel over here on the right, leaving me x plus 1. And I can distribute the 2 to get 2x plus 4. Set that equal to x plus 1, and now we'll solve it. Move the smaller x term, subtract it over to get x, subtract over the 4 to get negative 3. And so there is the point on the graph. When y is a y coordinate of 2, the x coordinate was negative 3, there's my point. All right, so right here in the step you can see subtracting the x from the right to the left and then subtracting the 4 from the left to the right. 5. What are the intercepts of the graph? Remember your x-intercepts? That all your y coordinates were zeros. So put 0 in for the y, because remember, g of x is y. Whoops. And we'll do the same thing. Multiply x plus 2 to, well, wait, if I multiply x plus 2 to the 0, that's just 0. So just the numerator, x plus 1, has to be equal to 0. Subtract over the 1. X is equal to negative 1. There's my x-intercept, negative 1 comma 0. Y-intercept, now the x is the 0. So just like we did these up here where we substituted in the 1 and the 2 for the x's, we substitute in the zeros. 0 plus 1 is 1, 0 plus 2 is 2. Y is 1/2. My y-intercept is at 0, comma 1/2. All right, graphing calculator time. I apologize for my screenshots here. This is an old TI-83 Plus, so I'm going to bring in my new calculator, the TI-84 Plus CE, which is a great calculator to look at here. Okay, so the difference here is the TI-84 Plus series, it has a fraction button. All right, so we're going to go to y equals. This is your function button. Well, let me clear that out. And this is where I'm going to let my function be equal to this fraction. Now, the fraction command is an alpha shortcut with F1, 2, 3, and 4. These are some shortcuts on the calculator. So if I hit alpha, y equals, it will give you a pop-up window, and it will give you a fraction numerator over denominator. You can see there's my text boxes. I don't ever use number 2 because I don't work with mixed fractions. It's either a proper fraction or an improper fraction. So I'm going to hit enter because one's highlighted. And now it's just like my math lab. They give you the text boxes on the top and the bottom to enter your expressions. So just to the right of the green alpha key is x. That's my variable x plus 1. Yes, there's other letters on there. It just depends on what mode you're in. Right now we are in the function mode. On the bottom we put in x plus 2. And we're going to graph this and use your calculator to help answer these questions. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go to zoom number 6. That's my standard window. There's other options here like a decimal window and a square window. Zoom standard goes from x-axis -10 to +10, y-axis -10 to +10. So if you hit the window button, that's your x-min, x-max, y-min, y-max. Tick marks are counting by ones. All right, now with this graph on my screen, what you want to do is hit the trace button. Once you hit the trace button, it will give you all kinds of x. This is where you find your points and your cursor will be flashing. So find the domain. All right. If you want to check this, we said x couldn't be equal to -2. Type in negative, not minus. This is the negative sign. So if x is equal to -2, notice that the y is equal to nothing. All right, that's the value that doesn't exist on my graph. That's a restriction. Number 2 is the point 1, 1/2 on the graph. Okay, type in 1. When x is 1, I get 2/3. There's my 2/3. When x is equal to 2, type in a 2. Enter. What's my y? 3/4. There it is. It finds these values for you right away. If g of x is equal to 2, now I can't type in a 2 because that changes the x. So to do this problem, go back to y. We're going to go down to y2 and just type in a 2 because remember, g of x is the y. So we're going to just type in a 2. And now graph it. Now we get that horizontal line. And it intersects right here. This calculator will find that intersection point. Second trace. Number 5 is your intersection. All right, so I've always been told is to move your cursor as close to the point as possible and it'll find it quicker. It's going to ask you a series of 3 questions. What's the first curve? Well, that's y1. Just hit enter. What do you want for the second curve? y2. Hit enter. Do you want to make a guess? No, just find me the answer. -3, 2. And that's what we had in this part right here. There's my -3, 2. Find your x-intercept. Okay, second trace. That's number 2. 0 means x-intercept. So I'm going to choose number 2. And again, it's going to give you a series of questions. My x-intercept is right here. And I need to be to the left of that x-intercept, which I am, but there's a break in my graph. So I'm going to move my cursor until it's on the second part of the blue curve and just to the left of that point right there and hit enter. And I get this little vertical line. That means this is the left boundary of my interval. The right bound is now I need to go past where I see it crossing the x-axis, and you can choose anything over here is good. Hit enter. And there is the interval for where there has to be an x-intercept. And again, if you want to put your cursor really close, or you can just hit enter. And there's the x-intercept, -1, 0, which we had down here. If I want to find the y-intercept, now I know that x has to be 0. I'm in the trace mode because I've got numbers on the bottom. Just type in a 0, goes in for x, hit enter. There's my 1/2. Okay, so there's the graph version of doing that problem. All right, so I'm going to move this off to the left here on my other monitor and just move through this graphing. Oh, you rat. There we go. Next problem. Now, here is a very ugly function. No way would I want to do this problem all by hand like I did over here. This is ugly. This, I'm going to the calculator. I'm sorry. Bring the calculator back into play. I know my screenshots have got the old one. I prefer my new calculator here. Y equals, let's clear them out. So put your cursor on each equation and hit the clear button. And let's type this in. 0.56 x squared minus 34.39 x plus 1212.57 plus, that's a fraction, alpha, y equals, there's my fraction, 20,000 over a 1. All right, so now the problem states The average cost C of X, this is your Y. My Y is the average cost of manufacturing X computers per day, is given by this function. Determine the cost of manufacturing 30, 40, and 50 computers. And then they're going to ask you to graph C of X in the interval from 0 to 80. This is your domain. Now remember, our window went from -10 to 10 for my X's. I need to change these values. So now I'm going to change this from 0 to an 80. And now we're going to graph it. And now we're going to graph it. There's no graph. What's going on? Trace. Oh, okay, there we go. Look at my Y values. 20,732. They're huge. I'm only going up to a positive 10. All right, so I got to go to my window, and we're going to have to change that. So maybe let's change the Y min. Well, we'll keep the Y min at 0. We don't need any negatives. But we definitely have to change that Y max. Let's see, that was 20-some thousand. I'm just going to double it. Let's try 40,000. Now, because I don't want to see 40,000 tick marks here, I'm going to let my Y scale count by every 10,000. And you can put it in whatever you want. And regraph it. Let's see. There we go. There's my graph. Now, I didn't have to go to 40. I could have went to 30, got the same effect. But now I can see the graph on my screen. Now that I see the values here, I can hit the trace button, and we can find 30 computers. Type in 30. So $20,684.87 is going to be my answer here. All right, so let me move my calculator off to the side and continue my PowerPoint here. And again, my screen went blue. That is totally weird. Okay, so at 40, I guess I did 40 first because I think that was the first value that even showed up on my calculator, would be 1232.97. Type in a 30. Whoa, what's the problem here? Oh, darn it. I see on my graph. I made a mistake on my graph. Let me bring it back over here. I just noticed that it's over 1, not over X. That's okay. We'll just make a fix there. Just go back into Y equals. And I don't know why I put a 1 there. That should have been an X. Okay, there the graph looks better. Okay, now it matches what I have on my screen. So 30, we'll put in 1351.54. And that's going to be interesting. Never got the blue screen like that. Type in a 50 in my trace mode, and you get 1293.07. And of course, when you have to make the graph in my math lab, what you're going to see is a graph similar to what's in your graphing calculator window. And what you want to do is make sure it's 0 to 80 here, but then notice it'll be a multiple choice answer. Make sure that your Y min and Y max matches to what their answers are. So maybe you have to change your window to something different. All right, that's